Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. It's official. South Africa's taking Israel to court on the international stage over what it says is genocide against the Palestinian people. The city of Lethbridge has activated its extreme weather response protocols to help provide shelter from the cold. And this is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. We hear from the group Not For Sale on just how often kids in Canada are being targeted by predators.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The International Court of Justice in Hague will hear from Israeli lawyers on Friday as part of 2 days of hearings in a case filed by South Africa against Israel. South Africa is charging the Jewish nation with genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Those are allegations that both Israel and the United States are calling baseless and without merit.
The court meets today and will meet tomorrow under Article 74, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Court to hear the oral observations of the parties on the request for the indication of provisional measures submitted by the Republic of South Africa in the case concerning application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip, South Africa versus Israel.
Top Israeli lawyers are expected to argue the death and destruction in Gaza are collateral damage in the war against the terrorist group Hamas and not signs of intention to wipe out the Palestinian people. Since the October 7th attack by Hamas, there are a number of regions in southern Israel that have depopulated. According to former foreign policy advisor Dan Signor, the biggest reason is that most Israelis do not feel safe there anymore. He made the comment on TBN's Centerpoint program.
If Israelis are going to repopulate where they had been living before, in these 20-plus civilian communities in the south, they have to be assured that there aren't these barbaric rape mobs and terror groups still hovering around that border. And Israel right now is the only one who can provide that security, unless some other entity is willing to step in.
The persecution of Christians in Nigeria continues to rise. According to the folks with Release International, extremists have not only been attacking Christian villages, but have also been kidnapping Christians and holding them for ransom. Andrew Boyd has the details.
New reports confirm that Christians are being targeted for kidnap and ransom in Nigeria, sometimes by bandits hungry for cash, sometimes by Islamist militants determined to drive Christians off the land. In November, kidnappers shot a pastor dead after receiving £1 million ransom payment from his church. A report by UK parliamentarians heard that almost 90% of Christians kidnapped around the world are taken in Nigeria. Even larger numbers are being murdered or forced to flee. UK-based Release International describes an epidemic of kidnapping and murder which is forcing Christians from their homes in a bid to Islamize Nigeria. Fulani militants attacked Monday Ali's home in Niger State. He returned to find a scene of devastation. He told Release International, "They killed my parents and burned their house and their bodies. They kidnapped my brothers and 5 sisters. They're holding my sisters as sex slaves." A new report by International Christian Concern claims more than 500 Christians were killed in 55 attacks over just 4 months. They say Christians experience a disproportionate share of the killings and kidnappings. Nigeria has become a burial ground for believers of the Christian faith and is arguably the most dangerous place to be a Christian in the world today. These reports confirm what Release International and others have long been saying, that Nigeria has become the kidnap capital of the world and Christians are being targeted in an attempt to drive them off their lands. Release International is calling for tighter security to eradicate this epidemic of abductions and to protect Nigeria's vulnerable Christian communities. But let Faith and Monday Ali have the last word. Although he's lost his entire family, Monday told us, "I can forgive, but it's very hard to forget what happened. When I read the Bible, the Word of God, I'm comforted. Please pray that my sisters are released from captivity so I can give God the glory. This is Andrew Boyd for the Global News Alliance.
Ed Broadbent, the former Ontario MP and former leader of the New Democrats from 1975 to 1989, has died. He was 87. The Broadbent Institute, which he founded, announced his death in a statement on Thursday afternoon. Broadbent was the first leader of the New Democrats to see his party rise to first place in public opinion polling. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh called Broadbent a lifelong companion of our movement and our party. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sent his condolences to Broadbent's family, friends, and Canadians who are mourning his passing. You know, this weather has been keeping us in a lot of mourning here. Environment Canada issued an extreme cold warning for our region here in southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, with the wind chill, we've seen values below -40. How much longer will this bitterly cold temperature be sticking around?
Well, unfortunately, right through the weekend, Hal, and you hit the nail on the head by calling it bitterly cold because, oh yes, the polar vortex has arrived. With the wind chill factored in, tonight's temperature could go as low as -48 overnight. That means frostbite within minutes for exposed skin. So we're looking at dangerously cold temperatures tonight, along with periods of snow. Friday, high of -32 with a wind chill near -46 and periods of snow as well. That snow is expected to stop over the weekend, but still very cold until Monday, and I'll be back later to tell you the good news about next week because it will warm up a bit, Hal.
Wow, -48. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The city of Lethbridge has activated its extreme weather response protocols to help provide shelter from the cold. A number of facilities are now open later to help some of our most vulnerable. That includes the main and crossings branches of the Lethbridge Public Library, the Regional Park and Ride Transit Terminal, and the Helen Schuler Nature Center. Daytime community supports are also available at Streets Alive, the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen, and our city's 2 food banks. The Arctic air will continue in our region now through the weekend. Daytime highs across much of the province are only expected to hover around -30 degrees. The cold weather's created such a need for warm winter clothing for many of our most vulnerable here in the city. The folks at My City Care say they're collecting items to help those less fortunate during the colder winter months.
So here at My City Care, we are looking for sleeping bags, for warm blankets, and for adult jackets and adult gloves and mittens. So those are kind of the primary thing. We've just seen a really big need, obviously, with this cold weather snap. We've already had over 80 people through the office this week, and over 250 people that we've helped through getting clothing and things this week. So it's been a busy week.
Lister says if you have some items you can donate, you can do so Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. at My City Care, which is located at 120 F Mayor McGrath Drive North here in Lethbridge. Another drug house has been shut down in our city. The Safer Communities and Neighborhoods, or SCAN unit of the Alberta Sheriffs, obtained a court order against the owner of 1607 3rd Avenue North. The property will be closed for 90 days. Any tenancy agreement or lease of the property is invalid during that period of time. The drug house has been boarded up, fenced, and all locks will be changed while the police investigation into the property continues. You know, since it began in 2008, Alberta SCAN Unit has investigated more than 8,000 properties around the province. A man who's the main suspect in a couple of arson cases in Pincher Creek has been charged. Emergency crews were called out to 2 fires on Tuesday, one at a local business in the town and another at a residence a few blocks away. The fire spread quickly, but was put out by firefighters with no injuries reported. The investigation revealed that accelerants were used at both locations. 35-year-old Michael Patterson of Pincher Creek faces various charges, including 2 counts of arson and assaulting a peace officer. He was expected to answer to the charges in provincial court earlier today. 2 people died following a head-on collision in Lethbridge County on Wednesday night. Police say they received a call around 8 p.m. about the 2-vehicle collision which occurred on Highway 23 at Township Road 104. A 52-year-old man from Nipawin, Saskatchewan, and a 63-year-old man from Tabor both died in the same vehicle at the scene. 3 others were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Police say 1 vehicle crossed the center line and hit the other head-on. The investigation into the collision continues. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Now, the topic of human trafficking has been brought to light once again since the release of the movie The Sound of Freedom, which has touched many hearts. It turns out human trafficking is not just an issue, however, in Central America, but also right here in North America. Joylyn Stickle heads up North for Sale in Lethbridge and joins us now to talk more about it. Joylyn, you say human trafficking is an issue here in Canada as well. Do you have some stats for us?
A lot of the stats that we do get are a bit skewed because it's such an underground issue. And so, what we can say is that more than 75% of Canadians working in the Canadian sex trade were exploited as a child, which is horrible. 25% of human trafficking victims in Canada are under the age of 18. And even though the Indigenous population makes up about 4% of our population, they make up about 50% of trafficking victims.
Wow. Now let's circle back to children for just a second. Is it kids under a certain age who are being trafficked?
No, predators will look for anyone who is vulnerable, really. And obviously, younger children do tend to be more vulnerable. And we do know that about 95% of the victims, actually 95% of the perpetrators, are well known by the victims. So it's not some guy driving up in a white van offering candy to little kids. It's what people who are well known, who are trusted by the family, and that makes up 95%, which is a really scary statistic.
As a parent, what are some of the warning signs to watch out for if I see my child as a victim of human trafficking?
Obviously, parents are always watching for changes in their kids and for attitudes that come out. But a lot of things that you can see are them being more secretive, being online and being more secretive, shutting down the screen if mom and dad come into the room. And some of the things are if they come home with new gadgets, cell phones, new clothes, if they make friends that they're keeping from you.
So, Joylyn, outside of contacting police, who else should parents or victims of human trafficking reach out to?
So you can connect to us and we can kind of help direct you. It's kind of more of a soft landing rather than straight to authorities. But we have good communication with the organizations there that we can connect people to the right people. And you could go to notforsale.ca and check in with us too.
Thanks so much for your time today, Joylyn. That was Joylyn Stickle, director of the advocacy group Not for Sale here in Lethbridge. The University of Regina Pride Centre for Sexuality and Diversity is challenging the rights of Saskatchewan parents and guardians to be informed about the consent to the gender identity transitions of their kids under the age of 16. Last August, the group launched a constitutional challenge to Saskatchewan's parental consent policy, which required teachers or principals to obtain consent from parents or guardians before their kids could use opposite gender names and pronouns in schools or embark on becoming a member of the opposite sex. UR Pride says that this parental consent policy would violate the child's right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the children's right to equality. John Carpia is president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms in Calgary. He and his group have been assisting Parents for Choice in Education and Gender Dysphoria Alliance in obtaining intervenor status in this court action. He has the latest as to where things stand right now.
The latest is that the UR Pride wants to start a new court challenge, and they're going to try to argue a different section of the charter that prohibits cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. And they're apparently going to be trying to argue that keeping parents informed about what's going on with their kids at school amounts to the cruel and unusual treatment or punishment of children. It doesn't sound like a strong argument, but you never make a prediction about what's going on in court. And certainly on the other side, there's going to be groups that the Justice Centre is supporting, like the Parents for Choice in Education, that are going to be advocating for the right of parents to be able to protect their own kids by, first and foremost, being informed about what's going on with their own kids.
You know, the snow we received lately in southwestern Alberta is the first snowfall for quite some time. For the most part, the water tables have been quite low and many of our reservoirs have been drying up. The Alberta government says more provincial help is on the way in support of our agricultural community. Officials say $993 million is being invested to expand and modernize irrigation here in the province. That would be pretty good news for farmers, ranchers, and our food processors. Our province's agriculture minister, R.J. Sigurdsson, says government officials are working with our agriculture sectors and monitoring the drought situation to ensure our farmers and ranchers are in the best position for 2024. The province also announced funding to support Indigenous students here in Alberta. The 3-year, $10.5 million pilot program is called Bridging Classrooms to Communities. Officials say the objective is to create welcoming environments, cultural awareness, and provide system supports for Indigenous students in and out of the classroom. Of the $10.5 million, officials say $7.5 million will be given to the Alberta Native Friendship Centres Association to distribute to friendship centres within their networks. The remaining $3 million will be awarded to 12 Indigenous groups in rural and urban areas across Alberta. Our province's Minister of Arts, Culture and Status of Women is headed to Los Angeles, California. Tanya Furr is on her way to LA to promote Alberta as a top location for film and television creators. While in Southern California, Minister Furr will be meeting with executives from HBO and other production groups to show them how Alberta is ready to make more award-winning productions like the Disney feature Prey and the HBO series The Last of Us. Together, they are nominated for 30 Emmy Awards. Officials say in addition to those meetings, Minister Furr will co-host an event showcasing Alberta's film and TV industry to Hollywood producers and studio executives. You know, I'll certainly take the weather in Southern California over our extreme cold any day of the week. Yes, it was bitterly cold in Lethbridge today, and those frigid temperatures will be sticking around for a few more days. A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. Environment Canada issued an extreme cold warning for our region. We've had wind chill values around minus 40 degrees today in Lethbridge. Ouch. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, not only are we receiving the bitterly cold temperatures here in southwestern Alberta, but more snow as well?
Yeah, well, you summed it up right there with that ouch, hell, and yes, we are looking at periods of snow tonight. Another 30% chance tomorrow, but after that, it should clear up and remain fairly frigid over the weekend. Not as bad as it has been, but still fairly cold. And then, of course, next week, we're going to see those temperatures warming up along with more snow. So once we get past these minus 28s and minus 32s this weekend, looking at a high of minus 8 on Monday, minus 4 for an expected high on Tuesday, down to minus 11 on Wednesday. But then, of course, we are looking at that 60% chance of flurries once again. Okay, average high for this time of year, minus 2, average low, minus 14. 13 was our high temperature on this day back in 1987. And it was a chilly, frigid minus 41 back in 1997. Sun rose this morning at 8:26, sunset this afternoon at 4:54 p.m. If you're noticing, those days are getting longer. It's 2 minutes longer today than yesterday, 8 hours and 28 minutes rather of daylight today. Lots happening on the west coast. Victoria looking at periods of snow and wind chill of minus 21, if you can believe that. Why? Okay, here's what's happening. BC is under an Arctic outflow warning. What that means is Arctic air combined with strong outflow winds are gusting to 60 km. That will generate wind chill values of minus 20s beginning tonight right through Saturday afternoon. We're looking at frostbite, risk of frostbite and hypothermia. This is actually going to hit Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, the Fraser Valley, and the Southern Gulf Islands. So we've got significant snowfall also associated with that low pressure system. So there's a potential for significant snowfall for parts of East Vancouver Island, as well as that Sea to Sky Highway on the lower mainland. And the areas along the Coquihalla also could get hit with some blowing snow and an extreme cold warning as well. Also Vancouver looking at flurries tomorrow and wind chill of minus 20. Okay, now in the rest of the prairies, as we were talking about earlier, extreme cold warning in effect. We're looking at wind chill values of in the minus 40s. We're looking at frostbite in minutes for both Edmonton and Calgary as we move over into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Also extreme cold warnings in effect in Saskatoon and Regina. Wind chill also in the minus 40s. Frostbite in minutes, and Winnipeg looking at a high of minus 18. Risk of frostbite, looking at a chance of flurries there as well. As we get into the central part of the country, we're looking at mainly cloudy skies, and Toronto is 40 to 60 km winds. Could see some flurries there as well, mixed with some showers, high of 1 degree. Minus 7 for a high in Ottawa, but they are under a winter storm watch, so another storm could be expected this Friday night into Saturday. They could be seeing 10 to 25 centimeters of snow possibly. Montreal clearing in the morning, but after that short lull, another storm may be affecting the province of Quebec as well as of Saturday. Atlantic Canada, same thing. Another storm is expected this weekend, similar to the one that impacted that region on Wednesday. But Halifax mainly looking at clearing skies. 0 degrees for a high. Charlottetown could see a bit of snow, minus 4 for an expected high there. Could see up to 2 centimeters of snow. And in St. John's, looking at 2 degrees, 40% chance of showers there you have it. That is your forecast.
It sounds like the Bank of Canada may be working on rolling out a Canadian digital dollar. According to a recent report, in December 13th and 19th filings, the bank asserted ownership of a Canadian digital dollar and central bank digital currency in both official languages under the Trademarks Act. The decision, however, to move forward with a digital dollar is still up to parliamentarians. What's interesting about this move, however, by the Bank of Canada is that back in August, it reiterated that a government-issued digital currency was simply unnecessary. The report said only around 14% of Canadians have abandoned cash purchases. It also stated that 11% of those with internet access do not bank online, and 16% refuse to shop online. Air Canada is appealing a decision by Canada's transport regulator that seeks to improve accessibility for travelers living with a disability. The agency says the airline must accommodate passengers whose power wheelchairs do not fit through a cargo door of a scheduled plane. The government told Air Canada to either find similar flights on a comparable route or swap in a plane that can carry the electric wheelchairs. The customer, however, must put in a request at least 3 weeks in advance. This all stems from an incident back in 2016 when passenger Tim Rose accused the airline of discrimination when his power wheelchair wouldn't fit, rendering his Ohio-bound flight off limits. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 11 points on the day to finish at 20,918. The Dow was up 15 points to 37,711. The S&P 500 was down 3 points today to 4780, and the Nasdaq was up just over half a point to 14,970. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.47 to $72.84 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 6 cents to $3.10 US. Gold was up $4.51 on the day to $2,028.91 US an ounce, and silver was down 15 cents to $22.75 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.84 per bushel, barley's at $6.58, canola's at $14.15, and corn is at $7.67 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was up $1.05 to $171.80. Feeder cattle were up $1.65 to $226.28, and lean hogs February contract was up 53 cents to $72.60. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 74.66 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the city of Lethbridge has activated its extreme weather response protocols to help provide shelter from the cold. A number of facilities are now open later to help some of our most vulnerable. That includes the main and crossing branches of the Lethbridge Public Library, the Regional Park and Ride Transit Terminal, and the Helen Schuler Nature Center. Daytime community supports are also available at Streets Alive, the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen, and our city's 2 local food banks. Coming up, a one-on-one interview with Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan, who's going to discuss a wide range of issues, including where our city and how our city is working with the province to address the doctor shortage here in our region. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca. You know, there are a lot of hot-button issues which have impacted the lives of so many here who live in Lethbridge. Today, we're going to chat with the Mayor of Lethbridge, Blaine Hagan, to discuss some of those very important issues. Mayor Hagan, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you, Al.
Now, let's start off talking about the financially struggling Lethbridge and District exhibition. City Council voted to provide some emergency funding in the form of $250,000 an operating grant. Now, there's also, another $950,000 set aside for more emergency funding. The Lethbridge and District exhibition announced that it has also parted ways with its CEO, Mike Workington, and there's also going to be a new interim board. Quite the shakeup here. What's going on? What happened here?
So a lot of changes, and it's something that obviously, as you just mentioned, the board has parted ways with the CAO. Mutually agreed to part ways there. And this is obviously not a city organization, so it's something that we are been sitting on the sidelines, kind of conversing with them, making sure that we're this facility is within our community. So if there's any issues, we would like to know what is happening. And so we have worked with them for quite some time, quite a few months, and I've tried to dig deep into what is exactly happening there. and it's been a struggle. They've had some financial concerns for a while, and in light of COVID and some of the different interest rates and inflation, many things have put them in the situation that they're in today.
And this isn't the first time that the city has bailed out the exhibition, correct?
That's correct. And you know what? I was talking with our scholar, I'll call her, and that's our historian on council, Belinda Croson, and she has told me that there's been numerous times over the past that this has happened, and we're talking going back many years, because it's 127 years, right? So there has been other times.
So how much did it hurt that the province declined to help out with over $1 million in emergency funding to help support the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center? I mean, you were going to match it as long as the province helped out as well, right?
Absolutely, and the reason they decided to opt out on that is they found that they were concerned with the business plan that they had, and it was, to be quite honest, it was a concern that we have had as council for quite some time as well, as we're going through these discussions. And so having them mention that, it was similar concerns that we felt. And so when they decided not to fund, that was it wasn't a large surprise. However, we will continue to work with with the province, because they have put $25 million into this, and we want to make sure that we protect or $27 million. I'm sorry. We want to make sure that we protect their asset, and it's their asset as well as ours. And I'm saying, as an asset, they do not own it. There was obviously a grant that went into that house. So, but to put $27 million into it, we've got $25 million. We're also backing about an $18 million loan as well for the exhibition. And, the county has a couple $1 million in there as well. So we're trying to protect those investments into that organization. And so, yeah, it's tough that we've got to where we are today, and nobody wanted to be here. And it's unfortunate, but, it's been a tough few months for sure.
Yeah, $77 million facility with the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. The expression is, let's build it and they will come. But apparently people were not coming in fast and furious, like a lot of people are anticipating. So, yeah, it remains to see what's going to happen there. Blaine, it seems that the city of Lethbridge is not alone when it comes to feeling the financial pinch. The city has been dealing with inflationary pressures and challenging interest rates. Could we potentially maybe see a property tax increase moving forward, or perhaps maybe the city's looking back at cutting back on some services?
We do have our 4-year budget in place here, and so we are not looking at a tax increase. And I'm happy to be able to say that. Now, you know what? If there's some emergency thing happens, I don't know. I don't have that crystal ball, but no, we have no intention of a property tax increase, because we do this over a 4-year budget, and that's already been allocated, and we've been, we will continue with that budget that we've already put in place.
Now, Lethbridge and a number of other municipalities, including Red Deer and Wood Buffalo, have been putting pressure on the province to decentralize EMS dispatch. Many are still concerned that ambulance wait times are far too long. Where do we stand with that in that relationship with the province and decentralizing?
That's a great question, Hal. And I have met with Mayor Gondek from Calgary, as well as other mayors that are within, that have similar concerns. And so it's Gondek from Calgary, us from Lethbridge, and we've got Red Deer in there, and Wood Buffalo. But Wood Buffalo, we've seen, has now is got their EMS dispatch back, and so which is something that we met here last week to try to figure out exactly what we're going to do if we're going to push forward with that same idea and wanting to get ours back. So it's in the pipe. And you know what? It worked well before. We were sad to see it leave. We were not supportive of seeing it leave. So we will see what that brings going forward. We're going to kind of watch and see what happens with Buffalo, and see, how they've with getting theirs back. But it's something that I know our fire and EMS would like to see as well.
Can you maybe look at that as a working model to see how successful they are, maybe implementing something similar here in Lethbridge?
Absolutely. And, they're getting back what they had before. So we know that it works. So they're getting that back. And as we had it as well within our community. So, yeah, we'll watch that as moving forward for sure.
Now, can you explain to our viewers how the city has been working with the province to try and attract more healthcare professionals, including doctors, to our region here?
That's a great question. It's something, and that was going to be one of my answers to what am I so proud about this last year, Hal, and that is one of them. That is something that has made me super excited. Is the doctor retention as well as the recruitment. I've been told, and I want to verify this, that per capita, Lethbridge has the most new doctors than any community in Canada. I want to verify that because we've got 27 to date. There's 25, and now I just was told last week 2 more. 27 doctors within our community. Would we like to see 50? Absolutely. But I'll tell you what, 27 is quite an improvement from what we had a couple of years back. So it's a strategy that we've been working on for some time. And remember, it's not even our jurisdiction. However, we've worked with Alberta Health Services to make sure that we're a partner with them along the way and helping them as if they have any questions. We did a little bit of a campaign. We had about $15,000 that council put out to be able to help attract doctors to our community. And so working with them has been really important, something that we hadn't, to be quite honest, done over the years. And so the last couple of years, I meet on a regular basis with Alberta Health Services and with the Chief Zone Officer of the South. And so it's worked really well and partnering together and collaborating together because we're seeing 27 new doctors, which is absolutely fantastic.
After my doctor left and he went to the Netherlands and he says, you know what, I'm out of Canada. I've had enough. I'm like, wait, what? And it's been about 2.5, 3 years. Finally, we got a doctor as well who moved here from Nigeria. So I'm pretty excited, and she's been wonderful so far for my family. Now, the province announced details of a new Safer Communities and Neighbourhoods, or SCAN unit, to be set up in Lethbridge. You won't have to rely on one from Calgary coming down all the time. How much will this really help to address crime in our city and shutting down the various drug houses?
Pushed really hard for that one, Hal. As you're well aware, I'm a person that definitely a mayor that wants to see a safe community. And so this is something that I was a platform that I had during the campaign as well. And it's not just myself, our council, everybody wants to have a safe community, right? And so when working with the provincial government and Minister Ellis, and he had a promise prior to the election that, about the SCAN unit. And because we'd bring them down from Calgary if we had issues. And you know what, sometimes that was, you'd get them once a month or every couple months. You didn't have someone that was full-time here. And we had the most calls of any community. And so of our size. So we thought it was important to have that down here. I had the promise prior to the election, and it was definitely a promise made and a promise kept. And I thank Minister Ellis for that. And we look forward to being able to deal with these drug houses within our community, because there has been quite a few. And so being able to have that SCAN unit set up full-time in Lethbridge is extremely welcoming.
Now, Lethbridge City Council established a cross-functional task force on lawlessness. How did it go after the initial meeting of the Downtown Lawlessness Reduction Task Force last month?
Well, initial meeting and 4 since then, if you can believe it, Hal. This is how we really want to tackle this. It's been great. We've got the right players at the table right now. We'll look at expertise outside as well, because we've had some reach out and say, well, hey, how can I be a part of this? But, we started on a group that was pretty focused on emergency services, police, downtown BRZ, city administration, and city council, with myself and acting mayor Middleton Hope being on that committee as well. And like I mentioned, we've had 4 meetings since, and this is something that is, people have approached us from the downtown BRZ and have asked, how can we be part of the solution? Many people will be out and they will complain about issues that we have within our community, but to have folks like that come forward and ask how they can be part of the solution, we were excited to be able to set something like this up, and we have worked very well with them to date, and we have the right players at the table. We'll bring in others as needed, but this is going to be, I can honestly say this is something interesting that I looked at my calendar this morning. I actually have more of these lawlessness task force than I have city council meetings booked this year. Wow. So this is the focus, that to make sure that we're diving deep into this and making sure that we have safety within our community.
So with some of the meetings which have already taken place here, Mayor, what are some of the biggest concerns heard, and how are we really addressing crime in the downtown core?
How are we addressing crime? Well, one of the things that we had done last year, we put in place, it was the encampment strategy. So council put together some dollars, I guess, if you will, and connected with our administration to go out and find a way to deal with the encampments that we had within our community. They got out of control. And this wasn't just our community. Many communities had this concern. We decided to hop on this as quickly as we could, direct administration to not only remove the encampments, but to offer the support that many need within our community. So it wasn't just dismantling somebody's home as a tent would be for many, but it was also to make sure that we put these folks in communication with the social service providers in our community. And that has worked extremely well. I'm really happy with the results of that, and we'll continue moving forward with that strategy.
Now, the province says it's investing about $1 million in our city to help provide 50 extra shelter spaces to help our most vulnerable during the cold winter months which are coming. Let's talk about the importance of that kind of initiative, Mayor.
Absolutely. This is extremely exciting. Again, going back a couple of years, I attended an addictions conference, and this was a topic of conversation that this government was looking at doing this. And we now have one has opened up just outside of our community. And this is, I mean, we've got actually more. We've got Streets Alive is doing some work too with some of the housing, as well as we do have a recovery facility just outside our community. And this is something that has been music to my ears, as everybody, Hal, deserves a life of sobriety. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to get to that point, and the different support services that are needed, but we need to meet those folks where they are. And some may need it for 2 weeks, some may need it for a month, some may need it for 6 months. But to have no charge, this is zero charge, where anybody in Alberta can get recovery, treatment recovery, with picking up the phone or having somebody connect them with those services. And so this is extremely welcoming. I believe we're almost at capacity. And I say we, this is the province, but I'm excited to talk about this from a city level. Is they bring kind of a cohort, a group of 12, I believe they started with, and they'll add another 6 or 7, and up to that point of 50. And so they work together. And from that point forward, it's my understanding now that Streets Alive will help as they integrate into our community with some housing, et cetera. So we've got some great providers within our community, and that are working and collaborating with these services, and so to get the support service needed. I want to touch base on one other thing, Hal, when it comes to permanent supportive housing, as part of this strategy, and Lethbridge Housing has been the organization to move this forward as a community-based organization. So that particular building should be done here at the end of next year, and will help support up to 40 individuals that need permanent support, possibly for the rest of their lives. But these are some of the folks that are on our streets today. So that is why this is so exciting. And I'd love to shout it from the rooftops that we're having this permanent supportive housing facility that will be opened up here next year.
Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgin, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
There is lots going on in Alberta politics, and that seems to be a constant thing. Joining us from Lethbridge today to chat about this is Cheryl Seaborn. Cheryl is a registered nurse and has been involved in politics for a long time as a former UCP constituency president, and she was also the UCP candidate for the Lethbridge West riding in the last provincial election. Cheryl, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you on here. Now, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has rattled her saber by invoking the Alberta Sovereignty Act to defy the federal Liberals' clean energy regulations intended to force all provinces to have a net zero electricity grid by 2035. What are your thoughts on this? Is this just a symbolic symbol, or do you think Smith will in fact refuse to cooperate with the feds no matter what?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, but I think the way to really look at that is the feds. Are they going to cooperate with Premier Smith and other provinces who object to it? She certainly has been very good at reaching out and saying, she's happy to meet with the Prime Minister, she's happy to meet with Minister Guilbeault and the Environment Minister. They haven't been as willing to meet with her. So I think that that's the direction that the question really needs to be, is are they willing to actually meet with the premiers that are having a difficulty with this? And it would appear the answer is no. They continue to push forward with their agenda. And so do I think that she's rattling a cage here? I think push come to shove, she will use that Sovereignty Act to benefit Albertans. I mean, I can't totally speak for her, but it would not surprise me to see her do that. I think that the federal government needs to take note that they have been found twice now with federal courts recently that they maybe are overstepping their jurisdiction into provincial territory, and they need to take a step back. And so they are not really regarding those things very seriously. And so this is really an issue with the federal government. And I think Premier Smith is going to do what she needs to do to protect Albertans and to protect Alberta, the interests of Albertans.
And there are some concerns that not playing nicely with the federal government will create some uncertainty for businesses considering investing in Alberta. On the other hand, Premier Smith is even going so far as to say she would consider creating a provincial crown corporation, allowing the government to build its own electric plants. Is that a good or a bad idea?
Well, let's address the first thing, which is about investments. And interestingly enough, and I know that our opponents also within Alberta have suggested that might be the case, that we would lose investment, but we haven't. Actually, investment in Alberta goes up year over year. And one of the latest investments, of course, comes from Dow, who's investing quite a lot of money in the Path to Zero program that was announced last week. And that's actually a huge investment. And it actually shows Premier Smith is willing and wants to be able to use technology to be able to get to zero emissions. That isn't something that Alberta is against. We're not against climate, working towards climate adjustments to make sure that we're not putting more carbon out there than we should be, but we want to do it in a reasonable way. We have to look at what's best for Alberta and be reasonable about it. And so I think that that's a good example that actually investment hasn't left Alberta. Investment continues to come. We have low business tax here. We have low cost of living here. And so there's really good things that way. Now, a crown corporation is an interesting prospect, isn't it? So we see that that's working actually to the benefit of our neighbors in Saskatchewan, because they're actually going to not be collecting, according to Premier Moe, what he said, he won't be collecting carbon tax. And he has the ability to not have to do that starting January 1 on electricity, because they do have a crown corporation in Saskatchewan. We are not set up that way in Alberta. I think that Premier Smith is looking at doing that in an effort, again, to protect Albertan interests and Alberta from the ongoing overreach that the federal government continues to pursue, not just in Alberta, but across all of Canada in all of the jurisdictions that it's reaching. And so she is actively and proactively thinking about legal ways that she's going to be able to prevent the federal government, from continuing to overreach. And so do I think it's a bad idea? I think it needs to be looked at. I think the costs need to be examined. But overall, we do need to protect what is Alberta's.
Now, with the recent Supreme Court ruling that Ottawa's Impact Assessment Act is in fact unconstitutional, is there a possibility, or there is a possibility, that this itself could prevent the government from imposing net zero emissions on the electricity grid by 2035? So, Cheryl, what are you hearing from Alberta businesses on the court ruling?
Well, certainly we've heard, like we all are aware, it's been reported widely in media that businesses are very excited about that outcome. The cost of doing business has gone up dramatically. The cost of doing business just generally always does go up. But with the addition of what the federal government is doing, the costs have become quite exorbitant. And for small to medium-sized businesses, it's very concerning for them. They are very concerned. And so this type of court decision helps to support the idea that we should be protected in provinces. We have to stop having that overreach happen. And I think when we look at at net zero, we really need to define what net zero is. Net zero for the federal government is saying we don't want any more oil and gas. We don't want any more carbon at all. Net zero for the Alberta government is a much more realistic picture. It's saying we understand we are going to continue to need oil and gas, and not just Albertans, but all of Canada and across the world. We understand that. So let's use technology to be able to capture that carbon and make it zero, so that whatever we use, we also are capturing in a way so that we can have net zero. So that's very two different visions that we're getting. One from the Alberta government, which is a much more reasonable, measured outlook, and one from the federal government, which is basically saying we just don't want to use oil and gas anymore, which is a very unrealistic and unattainable goal at this time until technology catches up to that idea.
And by invoking the Sovereignty Act and promoting an Alberta pension plan, how do you think this affects our province's leadership role in Canada? And how do the other provinces regard us?
Yeah, and I think it depends on what province we're talking about, for sure.
Let's name a few then.
Yeah. Well, I think out east, I think probably our neighbors on the East Coast. And I actually can speak to this a little bit. I'm from there. I have family there, and they're a little bit unaware, I think, of what goes on in the West. I think that they are very unsure of what to expect from a place like Alberta, who's standing up against the government, and a government that generally they do support. I mean, they are generally Liberal supporters in the East Coast, and so it raises their eyebrows a little bit when they see the things that we're doing out in the West, for sure. I think that, however, having said that, I think I've seen more people from Ontario move to Alberta in the last several months, and then actually in the last probably 1 to 2 years, than I've ever seen. And when you ask them why are they choosing Alberta, it's because of affordability and because of freedom, and they can find a job here. And so, when you look at from that perspective, there are people who are seeing Alberta as a leader. They want to live here, and they don't want to be under the thumb of a federal government.
And what do you think of the proposal for an Alberta pension plan? Can you just weigh out what the pros are and what the cons are? And do you think the Premier can actually convince a majority of Albertans to switch over?
Okay, so yes, there are actually many pros. So Alberta has a young, the people that work in Alberta are younger. So they're going to be putting in a lot more money into the Alberta pension plan if it goes in that direction. Certainly we contribute a great deal to the CPP, and in fact support the CPP far above what other provinces support it. So we have a lot of pros in that direction. We have a lot of diversity in our investments, diversity in the way that we are doing, that our economy is going, which allows us to be able to support an APP. There are areas of con that can exist if the government doesn't handle it in a way that they need to. And one of the first things, in fact, the biggest thing, is we need to have guardrails. We need to ensure that the government today and the governments of tomorrow and in the future are not able to do anything with that APP. It has to be protected from government reach, similar to the CPP. So we have to make sure that the legislation is in place to be able to do that. There are some complexities that are involved. Quebec has had their own pension plan for quite a long time, and we would probably want to reach out to Quebec's example and be able to follow the things that they do in order to keep their pension plan safe, and reach out to them and maybe coordinate a little bit with them as well. There's a lot of coordination that's going to have to happen with the federal government. The federal government has indicated that the numbers are incorrect from the report, and I might say that the people that did the report, it was very independent. It was from the business of a former Liberal finance minister. So this is in no way, that we went to, or that the government went to a conservative business and said, "Can you do this independent study?" No, they didn't. And so the federal government right now is saying, "Well, those numbers aren't correct," but they're also not offering us any numbers, even though we've asked. Even though the government has asked, they're not offering any of those numbers either to come back and say, well, these are the actual numbers, which begs the question a little bit why they wouldn't be doing that. I don't think that Premier should be convincing anyone to switch over. I think that actually Albertans need to become informed. The report is available. I really encourage people to not be motivated by fear or to pay attention to necessarily what legacy media is saying about it, or really any media is saying about it. Really, what people need to do is they need to get on the website, actually look at the report and do their own research on it and come to a decision on their own. No one should be convincing anyone one way or the other. Albertans need to kind of step up and find this information and come to a decision based on the information they receive and how they feel that will impact them.
Now, you touched a little bit on younger people paying into the pension plan. How would those close to retirement or in retirement benefit from an Alberta pension plan? Can you touch on that?
Well, yeah, as you look at the report, it actually says that we would make more money, even those who have already retired would actually be able to access more money just because of the amount of money that we've already put into the CPP, and that we would be able to get back from the CPP to put initially into the Alberta pension plan. So in essence, it really does benefit those who've already retired and those who are close to retirement. So, and we would be paying less into the APP than we do the CPP. And so there really are a great many pros to this. And having said that, there's legislation that will have to be done, and it's going to take about 3 years to make this happen. You know, once you give the federal government notice, there's lots of legislation pieces that need to be put in place in order to not only protect the APP, but to be mindful of people who receive disability benefits through CPP that live in Alberta, and many of those other functions that need to be taken into consideration and dealt with from a legislative point of view.
Now, the recent UCP annual general meeting always sees some controversial resolutions being brought forth. One of those approved by party members was one that calls for teachers, schools, and school boards to get written consent from parents before any chosen names and pronouns of students. Do you think Alberta should follow the path that Saskatchewan and New Brunswick have taken by putting those parental rights into law?
So, yes and no. I think that the grassroots of Alberta, and I've heard from many Albertans who are concerned about some of these things that are being hidden or done with their children in a school setting. But I think actually the real question is not about whether we put something in law as Saskatchewan or New Brunswick did, because honestly, another government can come and undo that law, right? And change that law. What really needs to be understood and accepted is that parents have the first right to teach their children and to raise their children the way that they believe they need to be raised, whatever that means to them culturally, by race, by religion, whatever that means to them. And what we need to do is have the government have protections of parents that the government cannot overreach into parents' lives and those decisions. And so we have to be it's a very fine line that we walk when it comes to things like that. I think parents need to be protected from government. And how do we do that so that no government can overreach into what is a parent's responsibility to do? And so we need to flip that idea around, that governments are going to protect my right as a parent or your right or other people's rights as a parent, and say, no, we already have rights as parents. How are we going to protect our rights from the government? And I think that's really how we need to look at that.
Well, you've really segued into my next and final question, because Albertans have always seen themselves as freedom protectors, not to be subjected to the federal government. So just give us some more thoughts on how parents and educators can guide children to grow up into mature adults who are freedom-minded, to be freedom-minded.
Yeah, so, I think we need to teach our children to look at the countries that aren't free, right? Let's look at the countries like China, North Korea, Russia, some in Africa, some in the Middle East, where they really don't experience freedom. Venezuela is a more recent place where those people have unfortunately gone down a path that I don't think any of them really want to be, and show them what that actually looks like, what not being able to say what you want to say looks like, read what you want to read, where news is only being controlled by the government. You know, where fear is used, and this is the most atrocious thing to me, and it's creeping into our society, where fear is being used to motivate people in a specific direction to do things. And when you consider those things, we need to teach our children what that looks like and what the end result of that is, because I think those things are all familiar to Canadians right now, that we're being told we can't disagree with certain groups, that we're being told our voices are not allowed to be heard by our government, that we're told, you know, there are some books that can be read, but others that can't be, where we have government-funded media organizations, you know, and where fear is consistently being used as a method to get people to do a certain thing. And if we can teach our children what the end result of that is and where we are right now in Canada, maybe we can all be a little bit more aware of what that will look like at the end. And I don't think it's the ending that some people think it will be. And so I have great concern about our freedoms as they stand right now. And I have great concerns about children not understanding what that actually means to them. And we need to point in the direction of what other countries are going through, the poverty that they experience, the fear that they experience, the inability to ever have a conversation with someone that might be a dissenting opinion about something. That is actually a terrifying thing. And we need our children to understand that we don't have that right now here, but that it's coming. And this is what it looks like.
Cheryl Seaborn is a former UCP candidate and constituency president. Cheryl, thanks so much for being with us today.
It was very much my pleasure. Thank you.
It was great having you. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.